So head direction cells are what people call the neuronal compass. And I can illustrate easily what they are by showing this experiment in which a mouse is rotating spontaneously in an arena. And whenever the mouse faces a certain direction, which is in this cell, the lower left corner, then this cell fires. So in other words, this particular cell encodes when the mouse faces a specific direction, and collectively the ensemble of head direction cells are going to span the entire horizontal plane and form a compass. So this is the way head direction cells have been studied since their discoveries in the 90s. But in recent years, people started debating whether head direction cell may encode three-dimensional head orientation. And there is some reason for this. In normal life, we don't just move in a planar environment, but we can go up and down a house, look up or look down. And even when we are confined in a relatively planar environment, we still rotate our head in 3 dimensions. So for instance, if you lay in your bed and start rolling around, you are still perfectly aware of where the door is, where the window is, where the ceiling is. This really indicates that the spatial orientation should be 3-dimensional and head direction cells should be 3-dimensional. And indeed, a few years ago, 2 studies started demonstrating this. There was one study performed in bats where they found 3D head direction cells in the presubiculum, and one study performed by us in macaque where we found tilt-tuned cells. However, these studies have strong limitations. First, they were restricted in terms of the range of motion. Both of them were basically restricted to about 45 degrees of tilt for technical reasons. And also they were performed in flying species in the case of bats and in arboreal species in the case of macaque. And people argued that if you were to record in rodents or even in humans, which are essentially terrestrial animals, then you wouldn't find head direction cells. So in order to resolve this, we started recording studies in mice. What we did is that we placed the mice in a rotator, exactly the same we had in macaques before. And we programmed this rotator to span the entire range of 3-dimensional orientations. On top of that, we recorded exactly the same cells in a classical arena so that we would have a reference. We could say this is how the cells respond during a normal traditional test. And then we had a platform on which the mouse could walk in 3D, but again, this was restricted to only 60-degree tilt for technical reasons. So I am going to show you the result of this experiment. And to get started, I'm going to define the 2 important words in here. The way head direction cells have been defined traditionally, this is cells that encode orientation in the horizontal plane. And this is also called azimuth. And azimuth is a 1D variable because you can describe it by a single angle. So in order to reach 3 dimensions, you need to add 2 additional dimensions, which are tilt relative to vertical. And indeed, tilt is 2-dimensional because you can tilt your head side to side or up down. And so the question in our study was really, do cells encode azimuth and tilt separately or simultaneously? How do the tilt tuning curves look? And how does azimuth and tilt tuning interact? I'm going to start explaining this by starting with a simple example of a cell which is tuned only to tilt and by demonstrating its tilt tuning. Let me first explain how I encode tilt. There is a little bit of geometry involved, and a simple way to explain it is simply to imagine that there is a pendulum right here fixed to the head of the animal. So when the animal is upright, the pendulum is going to point right down. When the animal tilts nose down, the pendulum will align with the nose. And if the animal tilts right ear down, the pendulum will align with the right ear. So this entire space here represents all possible tilt. I'm now starting this movie, and you see here an animation of the way the rotator was moving. That's the real motion of the rotator, actually. It goes like this for 40 minutes, so I'm going to accelerate things a little bit. Let's look now. The animal is moving towards nose up, and you can see the pendulum going to the nose up position. A little bit further, the animal is tilting towards upside down, and you can see the pendulum at the upside down orientation. Here and here it goes. And you can notice that I am tracing a line that shows the motion performed by the pendulum. And in 40 minutes, this is going to cover all of this very uniformly. On top of that, I'm putting little red dots whenever this cell fires a spike. And we are going to look at the distribution of all of this spike along the sphere. In a few seconds, I'm going to accelerate this way up. Here we go. And now we can appreciate that the spikes tend to cluster in that particular side of the sphere, which is somewhere between nose down, upside down, and left ear down. Here it goes. The protocol is finished, and you can see how all of the spikes are clustered here. So this particular cell is sensitive to tilt with a preferred firing between nose down and upside down tilt. The next step is to show the three-dimensional tuning curve of this neuron. And the way I'm going to do this is that I need to add another axis to this sphere in order to show azimuth. In order to do that, I first flatten the sphere by using exactly the same type of projection you would use to make a map of the Earth. And this is going to look like this. So the nose down position, upside down are over here. And then I'm taking this 2D tilt map, and I'm adding another azimuth axis in order to get a 3D volume. And now I could replay the entire movie in this volume. We are going to do that really, really fast, and you will see that all of the spikes are distributed uniformly along the azimuth axis. And this is because this cell is sensitive to tilt only and not to azimuth. So here, a uniform distribution. Finally, I'm converting this into a color-coded tuning curve. So this is the way we recorded cell and characterized their tuning. Here is now another example cell, which is conjunctive. It is sensitive to both tilt and azimuth. Specifically, it fires preferentially for about 45-degree tilt towards the nose down orientation. And at the same time, it is firing preferentially for an azimuth of about 0 degree. And what we will see is that these two tuning interact multiplicatively so that the maximum firing of the cell occurs for 45-degree nose down at 0 degree azimuth. Here we go. I am animating the tuning curve, and the peak firing is here. So at the population level, we had cells that were tuned to azimuth only, to tilt only, or to both at the same time. We recorded in 3 different regions. The first in the anterodorsal nuclei of the thalamus, which is a canonical region for head direction cell. The second is the retrosplenial cortex that brings visual information and interacts with the head direction cell circuitry. Finally, we recorded the output of these two regions. The output is conveyed by the singular fiber bundle, and what we wanted to do was to test that these 3D signals were really going out of these regions. Now, in all of these regions, we found about the same thing, between 40 and 50% of azimuth-tuned cell, and about 60 to 70% of tilt-tuned. Interestingly, if a cell has 42% chance to be tuned to azimuth and 68 to tilt, and if these two tunings are distributed independently one from another, then you would expect 42% times 68% equals 29% of cells that encode both azimuth and tilt, and this is exactly what we found. So these are the population responses, and now I will show some more detail about the response of this type of cell. The first thing that we found is that azimuth tuning had a tendency to decrease when you tilted the animal. This is an example cell that was tuned only to azimuth. It didn't care about tilt. The average tilt tuning curve was flat. When we looked at the azimuth tuning curve, we saw that there was a clear azimuth tuning when the animal was upright, but very much less when the animal was tilted. And we found that this was the case in all of the cells, not only the ones that were tuned to azimuth only, but also the ones that were tuned to both tilt and azimuth, even when the tilt tuning curve of this cell was higher in upside down. We took all of these properties and we were able to model them by a model where tilt tuning follows Gaussian tuning curve, azimuth tuning follows form basis curve, which are circular Gaussian, and is modulated by a gain that depends on tilt angle, but which again has nothing to do with tilt tuning. And finally, these two tuning curves interact multiplicatively. By doing this, we could fit very well the tuning of all cells. This is the curve fitting for this example cell that we saw before, and this is the R square at the population level. Another important thing that we found is that all of this could be reproduced in free-moving animal, but on top of that, there were two important observations. First, this is another example cell recorded in the rotator. You can see that the azimuth tuning curve has a small amplitude of about 5 spikes per second, and the tilt tuning curve is the same. When we recorded the same cell in a freely moving arena, we saw that it was again tuned to azimuth, but with a much stronger amplitude. Notice that the preferred direction was not the same, and this is perfectly normal. This is because azimuth tuning is not anchored to the north. It is anchored to local cues, and these two environments are completely different with completely different local cues. Now let's look at tilt tuning. What we found is that the amplitude was also scaling up in exactly the same way, which indicates to us that tilt tuning is not just an artifact that you would see in a rotator, but it also exists in a free moving animal. What you also see is that tilt tuning had exactly the same preferred direction, and this actually is normal. This is because there is a universal reference for vertical that the animal can sense, and it is gravity. And indeed, we were able to confirm that tilt tuning is encoded to gravity by reproducing the rotation protocol in complete darkness or reproducing it after tilting all of the visual cues. In all of the cases, we found exactly the same tuning curve when it was computed with respect to gravity. So as a conclusion, we have demonstrated that head direction cell can encode azimuth or tilt or both of them. And this is really an impression that these two streams of information are independent and converging onto the cell. Azimuth tuning is encoded to visual cues. This was known already. And tilt tuning is encoded to gravity. What is important is that when we went into the detail, we found that everything that was found in our study was also compatible with previous studies in macaque and bat, which indicates that this is really a universal property. And finally, the fact that azimuth tuning subsides when we tilt the head raises quite a few questions. Can animals really navigate when they tilt their head? And what is actually the dimensionality of the head direction cell network? It looks like it is switching from a one-dimensional ring when the animals are upright towards a two-dimensional sphere. And with this, I thank the student who made the work and my long-time mentor, Dora Angelaki. I'm ready to take questions, and I will mention that the stories continues. I am now starting my lab to record this in freely moving marmosets at the Ernst Institute in Germany. Thank you.
Incredible. We have many questions and time for few. Andy Alexander's asking, work from the Wetlock group has shown cortical regions can be sensitive to mouse posture.